What's going on? In today's video, I'm going to be talking about one of the most underrated side hustles in 2024 and what I think is the most underrated side hustle in general. And no, it's not Bitcoin, it's not Amazon FBA, and it's not drop shipping. So what I'm going to be talking about today is reselling. And let me give you a little backstory about what reselling is and how I got started. So I actually got started in reselling by accident, to be honest. When I was 14 years old, I just got my permit. I grew up in a small town in North Dakota. So I got my permit when I was 14 years old, and I wanted to get my first car, but I didn't come from a wealthy family. So I got an idea. I grew up going to the farm with my grandpa on the weekends, and I learned a lot about like mechanics and how an engine works. So I'm very mechanically inclined. And I got this idea. It was fall cleanup in my hometown, and I saw people were throwing away all kinds of stuff like lawnmowers, snow blowers, weed whackers. And my grandpa and we were coming home from the farm one day. And like I said, I saw all these people were throwing away all the stuff. And I convinced him to go drive around for a little bit and see how much we could pick up. And I ended up picking up I think I picked up like 15 to 20 snowblowers and lawnmowers. And I brought them all to my parents' house. My mom was pissed, but I ended up getting about 10 of them running within the next day. I got about 10 of them running, salvaged some parts from some of the other ones, and I ended up listing each one for about $100 a piece on a local website. So there was Facebook back then, but I'm not sure if there was Facebook Marketplace. This was in like 2011, I believe. But we had a local website called Bizman Online, and I listed all of them on there. And I ended up selling all 10 of them that I got running in less than 2 weeks for $100 a piece. So I ended up making about $1,000. And this is a true story. And then I already kind of knew what kind of car I wanted to get. So I had my eyes set on like a Honda Civic hatchback. But the one I wanted was like $2,500 or something. And I didn't want to wait. But my dad came home from work one day and he said one of his coworkers actually had a Honda Civic hatchback for sale. And I was like, no way, really? And he's like, yeah. He said it's been sitting for a while, but it ran when it was parked. I asked, well, how long is a while? And he said, well, he parked it about 20 years ago. And I was like, oh, geez, how much does he want for it? And he said, $100 and you can have it. It has a title and everything. I was like, $100? I was like, what? So we ended up, I told him, sure, tell him I'll take it. And then what we ended up doing that weekend, the guy that had it, he lived in a small town called Tuttle, North Dakota, which is about 45 minutes from where I lived. And we ended up using, I think my brother-in-law came with, we used his truck and his trailer. We drove out there and I got there and I was like, this is it. I thought, because I told my dad I want a Honda Civic hatchback, but I guess I wasn't too specific on which year. So if you know anything about Honda Civic hatchbacks, I wanted like that. It was like a 92 to like 96. It has more of an egg shape in the back. This was a 1987 Honda Civic hatchback. It had like a square body. I think they're kind of cool looking back now, but it was hideous. But I figured, you know what? It's my first car. It's $100. It'll be a good experience to see if I can get it running again and then maybe drive it for a while. So we ended up bringing it to my house and I got it running, but it would only stay running for like 20 minutes and then it would die when it got hot and warmed up. But I ended up getting that fixed. It was ended up being the fuel pump or like fuel pressure regulator or something. And I ended up putting like whatever whatever a young kid does. I had to get exhaust, a cold air intake, and all this stuff. So I ended up sticking about $500 into it total. Like I said, I bought it for $100. I stuck 500 into it. I got it running good, but I decided like I don't want to be caught in this thing at school. And plus, I didn't even have my license yet. I think I had my permit so I could drive with an adult. But I figured, what's the point of keeping this? So I decided to list it on the same website, Bizman Online, for I think I listed it for like 1,800. And then it was like 2 days later, I had these two guys that worked in the oil field here in North Dakota. They came and looked at it, drove it around, and came back and they said, "Would you take 1,500 cash?" I didn't even really like know how to negotiate or anything, and I didn't even care to negotiate. I was like, 1,500, sure. Ended up selling it and made $900 profit on my first car flip, essentially. And then from there, I flipped all kinds of things since throughout high school and into my early 20s. I ended up flipping over 100 cars, mainly focusing on Subarus because I got to know my market. where I was at in North Dakota, because a lot of people love to drive Subarus because it snows in the winter and they love the all-wheel drive. So that's my quick little backstory about how I got started flipping things and reselling on accident when I was 14 years old. But it's always been my dream to become a pilot. My mom actually has a picture or two pictures saved from when I was in the third grade. The teacher asked us fill out this thing of like, what do you want to be when you get older? And I drew a picture of an airplane. I'll even link it right after this, but I drew a picture of an airplane, or what was supposed to be an airplane, like a little Cessna. And I wrote on there, I daydream about airplanes. And I also have another one that she saved that says, I would like to be a pilot because it could be fun to fly. But fast forward, I used all those profits from flipping cars throughout high school and into my early 20s to do my flight training. And I ended up getting 1,500 hours so I could start flying for the airlines. And I was actually supposed to start flying for the airlines in 2020, but due to the state of the world around that time, they ended up laying off all the pilots, so my flight training got canceled. This was a really big pivotal moment in my career, which led me going full time into entrepreneurship and flipping things full time. So in 2020, after all of this happened, my wife and I always knew that we wanted to eventually move away from my hometown. In my mind at the time, I thought, well, I'm going to do get established with like the airlines and everything, and she was going to finish her master's degree, and then once we get settled, maybe we'll move in like 5 to 10 years. But 2020, I think, was a blessing in disguise, and we saw it as an option to go all in. We ended up moving 1,500 miles away from our hometown to Phoenix, Arizona, and got right into flipping things full time. So it wasn't all sunshine and rainbows right away when we first moved there. When we first moved to Phoenix, we had about $7,000 saved up, and we wanted to go all in on flipping things. But since it was a new market, we didn't know exactly what to focus on. Because, like I said, when I lived in North Dakota, I got to know my market really well. I figured out what people wanted, what I need to buy things for, and what I could sell them for. So that's where like I said, I mainly focused on cars when I was in North Dakota, niched very down all the way to specifically Subarus because a lot of people love the all-wheel drive. And I'd still flip odd things like snow blowers and lawnmowers depending on the season. But obviously the profit margins weren't going to be as high of, when I would flip a car. But when we first got to Phoenix, we started doing some DoorDash during the days just to earn some income. And then we were doing what most people do, watching YouTubes, listening to podcasts, and just seeing, what's possible and what do we want to try. And that's where we stumbled upon selling things on Amazon. So once we discovered that you can sell things as a third party on Amazon, we thought that you had to do what most people do, is create your own product or buy a product off of Alibaba and then make your own listing on Amazon and do all of this stuff, and completely failed. What I ended up doing, since it was around election time, I'm not political at all. I'm not even going to go there. But I ended up buying election signs, and I thought I was going to go post them on Amazon and kill it. But that wasn't the case. I ended up maybe selling a few here and there, but I ended up buying over $2,000 worth of election signs from Alibaba, and then it just wasn't working out, and the election was coming up, so I was like, damn, I have to turn these quick, otherwise who's going to buy them after the election? So I ended up recouping my money. This is a true story again. What I ended up doing is I bought one of those like tent things at Walmart, like people use for like farmers markets and stuff, and I set up that tent on the side of the road on North Scottsdale Road in North Scottsdale, and I set up all these signs, and I started selling them for $5 a piece, and people were coming like crazy. I think the first day, I think I ended up making like $200 or $300, and I was like, damn. And what I ended up doing each day, I'd kind of figure out my pricing just like anything. So the next day, when I went back to set everything up, I started charging $10 a sign and still started selling a whole bunch. I think I ended up doubling what I made that day. I think I made like $500 or $600 that day. And then on the third day, what I started doing is I said, because I had a whole bunch of signs, more than I could even sell. What I ended up doing, I said $25 and you get 5 signs. And then I think what I started making I think the third day I made like $1,000. I was like, holy crap. So essentially what I ended up doing, I ended up making my money back from those signs from a failed Amazon endeavor and then some. I think I maybe profited like $1 or $2,000 by selling them on the side of the road. But it just goes to show you too, if you can't always look at something as a failure, you can always bounce back from anything. But fast forward after that, we ended up discovering on Amazon that you could sell used books. And that's actually how Amazon started, by selling used books. So we'd go to thrift stores and we would scan the barcodes on the back of the books with this app, and it would tell us if they were profitable or not. And we ended up doing that for about 8 months, 6 or 8 months, just going to Goodwills. And we were doing like 10,000, $8 to $10,000 a month in profit just selling used books. And we decided like, hey, let's scale this up. What we ended up doing is getting contracts with Goodwill and other thrift stores and recyclers and things to buy all of their used books in bulk. So we were buying semi loads, truckloads. It was called a Gaylord. Basically, one box would hold like 800 to 1,000 books, and we'd buy like 20 to 40 Gaylords at a time and scan each book. We ended up doing that. It was a little bit more of a risk. You obviously had to. We got a big. Wasn't necessarily a warehouse. We ended up renting this really get. It was in the ghetto. It was like a really big storage unit with a tin roof, and this was in the dead heat of the Phoenix summer. We were inside of. I'll even put a clip in here of us scanning the books. But yeah, we were inside of that storage unit warehouse type thing with a tin roof in the dead heat of summer. We had fans going. I bought this big AC cooler, and we were scanning each book one at a time. Like I said, it was a little bit more of a risk. You had to, obviously get a warehouse now. You had to put up all the capital to buy these Gaylord, which there was no guarantee if any of them were going to be profitable. Like I said, it was really hit or miss. But what ended up happening is, again, this was in 2020. Um, Amazon, they did what's called restock limits on third-party sellers' accounts, and they only wanted essential products coming in at that time. So books were not essential products. So they put restock limits on our account before we could send unlimited amount of books, and our restock limits went down to 5,000, and we currently had 10,000 sitting in our inventory at Amazon, meaning that we couldn't even send any more books in until we sold at least 5,000 books. So that basically put us, kind of hurt us financially, put us out of business basically overnight. What we ended up doing, moved back to North Dakota for about 3 months. Wasn't sure what we were going to do. We were like, we always could go back to fly. I could go back to flying. My wife could get a job in her or finish her degree or whatever. But we just knew like, screw the matrix. I don't want to work a job. I know I meant for more. I just didn't know, what do I do now? But what we ended up doing is moving back down to Phoenix, again, going full time into reselling. But this time we had a more of a plan. So jumping back to when we were in Phoenix the first time and we were scanning books and all of that, we stumbled upon couch flipping and just furniture flipping in general. Again, kind of by accident. So when we were taking out the trash one night at our apartment, one of our neighbors, they were carrying like a really nice couch and set it by the garbage can, and we were just like, "Hey, what's up with the couch? Got bed bugs or something?" And they're like, "No, we're just moving back to California. So like we don't have time to mess with it. We're moving tomorrow." And they're like, "If you guys want it, you can have it." And we were like, "Well, is there anything wrong with it at all?" And they're like, "No, we literally just bought it like 2, 3 months ago." So we're like, "Hell yeah!" And with everything that I've always done with flipping, I was like, we lived on the fourth floor apartment or fourth floor of an apartment. Thank God we had an elevator. But I told my wife, I'm like, let's bring this sucker upstairs and take some pictures of it and see if we can flip it. So we brought it up there. Tiny little apartment that we were sharing with some roommates. Um, had it in our living room. It took up like the whole living room. But took pictures of it, listed it on Facebook Marketplace, sold it for $300 the next day, and it actually ended up happening one other time at that same apartment. Somebody was moving and had all kinds of different furniture, and we ended up taking it and selling it. But we just never thought to put any real focus into flipping furniture. We just kind of saw it as like oh, we're doing this Amazon thing. We kind of just did that on the side. But when we moved back to North Dakota after our failed Amazon um, endeavor, we were here for like 3 months, and we were just sitting there kind of masterminding and thinking like, what are we going to do next? Like, should I go back and fly and work a job? I didn't really want to do that because prior to going to the airlines, I was flying charters and doing survey and flight instructing in my hometown, and I was starting to miss my son's birthdays, Christmas, all kinds of holidays. I was just basically gone all the time, and it just wasn't the lifestyle that I wanted to live. So that's where we got the idea. We said, hey, let's move back down to Phoenix and let's go full time into furniture flipping. So that's what we did. All we had was a shitty ass van that was beat up, bald tires. Moved back down to Phoenix. And I think from our Amazon endeavor, our failed Amazon endeavor, we had to put a lot of stuff on credit cards to basically break out of leases and all that stuff. So we had 2 credit cards that were fully maxed out, and we literally had $500 to our name in a shitty van. Right. What we ended up doing, moved 1,500 miles back down to Phoenix with this van. Stayed on different buddy, stayed on his couch for a week. He said we could crash there for a little bit. And then we used our van and we started going to Goodwills, different thrift stores, and we'd find different pieces. And we got a little tiny storage unit. The door was barely big enough to even fit a couch in there, but it was like 4 feet by 8 feet. And it was only like $40 a month. So that's where we stored all of our stuff that we got, and we clean it up and list it the same day. Started flipping stuff. I think we made the second day. I think we made like $300 or $400 flipping stuff profit, and then that first week, like I said, we were using our van, but we ended up busting out the back window. We put a couch in there at Goodwill that we found. We ended up busting out the back window. So then my buddy that we were staying on his couch, he was leaving for the next week, and he had a truck, and he said, hey, I'm going to be gone. I want to help you guys out. If you want to use my truck, go ahead. So we're like, thank you, God. Definitely took advantage of that. Flipped as much as we could that week. And it was our goal. We're like, hey, we're not going to be able to use this guy's truck forever, so we got to figure something out. So our plan was that week we flipped as much as we could, and we paid down just enough on one of our credit cards to go and pre-authorize a week to get rent a 16-foot box truck, like a Penske truck. You had to put it on a credit card, and our credit cards are maxed out. So we paid it down just enough to pre-authorize 1 week to get the Penske truck. And then that following week, my wife and I just looked at each other and we said, like, we have to make this work. Like, there's no ifs, ands, or buts. It's either at this point sink or swim. So that's what we did. We ended up. It was way more efficient because now with our van and with using my buddy's truck, we were limited to only being able to pick up like one couch or one dresser at a time. So with this box truck, we were able to pick up 8 couches at a time. So it was just way more efficient. We ended up making $5,000 our first week doing it. Then we used that 5,000 to move into an apartment. True story again here. We made $5,000 profit. We used like 2,500 for first month's rent, deposit, all of that good stuff to move into an apartment. And what we ended up doing, my buddies that we were staying at his house and using his truck, he called me and he's like, hey, I'm actually gonna be gone one more week or whatever. So if you guys need to use the truck, that's cool. I was like, no, bro, we ended up getting a Penske truck or whatever. But I was like, if we can crash at your house one more week, that'd be awesome. What we ended up doing, this is a wild idea, but what we ended up doing is we furnished our apartment same day we got the keys, we furnished it with some of the furniture that we were going to flip. And we actually ended up borrowing my buddy's coffee table, the house that we were staying at, or my buddy's house that we were staying at. We ended up borrowing his coffee table, some nightstands, and some other things to furnish this. And we took pictures and listed our apartment on Airbnb and got a booking the same day. it was somebody local to Phoenix that was getting some work done on their house, and they needed a place to stay. So they ended up booking our place for that week. We stayed at our buddy's house one more week while somebody was in our Airbnb. And that one booking, I think our rent at that apartment was like $1,800 a month, and this booking was like 16 or 1700. But as that week went on, the lady actually messaged us and she was like, "Hey, our contractors are actually running a little bit behind. Could we actually extend one more week?" Because we only put it on Airbnb available for 1 week while my buddy was gone. But she asked to extend, so we let her extend for another week. So she was there a total of like, I think like 15 days, like half the month. And that booking ended up actually paying for about 2.5 more months of rent in advance. So that really gave us a head start there. But yeah, this is the most underrated side hustle that I think there is in 2024. Use me as like a testimony of, this stuff actually works. If you need to make money now, this isn't just for people that just want to make money now. You can do this as a side hustle or go full time into it like I have now for the last 4 years. Like I said, I've flipped all kinds of things. This summer, I'm actually back in my hometown, and if you go check out my Instagram, it'll be linked below. I didn't post a whole lot of videos on YouTube doing this. I have some shorts. Um, Mainly, if you go check out my Instagram and follow me there, I post a lot of day to day of my stories as well. But I'm in my hometown visiting family this summer. I'm getting ready to head back down to Phoenix actually in about a week or so. But I decided while I'm here this summer to focus on, challenge myself. I wanted to make $75,000 flipping things, and I decided to focus on pontoons this summer. So I ended up flipping a whole bunch of pontoons, averaging around $4,000 profit on each one. Flipping each one in less than a week. Besides one of them I picked up, needed quite a bit of work, but I got to make a ton of content out of it. But like I said, I flipped all kinds of things: boats, cars, jet skis, furniture, multiple markets, multiple different niches, and I'd love to help you do the same. If you want to learn more about how you can get started, I'll link a free guide that I put together below in this video. But that's going to be it for this video, guys. I hope you got something out of it. If you did, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe, comment. We'll see you guys in the next one.